Hello, this is photographer Jason Leonard. I want to take a little time today to show you some basic posing and modeling tips for any new models who want to break into the industry. These are some suggestions and some ideas that will help you as you begin to develop your own personality and your own style of modeling. First thing I want to talk about today are the eyes. As you can see here with this model, her eyes are very well focused right on the center of the camera. Now we'll use only one light, that's natural light, and it's coming from the left-hand side of the photo. And you'll notice that she has her face open to the light and over half of it with only a small amount of shadow coming across the front of her face. The way you monitor that is make sure that your eyes feel the heat of the sun or the heat of the lamp on both eyes, that you have yourself open to both sources of light. She also posed by turning her chest and her shoulders toward the light, opening herself up to all the light she can get. This next shot is a gentleman by the name of Chad. He's the lead singer for a band called Split Lid. I've had the good fortune of working with about 260 bands on photography and posters and other things for their websites. Chad is a fantastic looking guy. He's got a great masculine image, and because he's a hard rocker, we wanted to bring that strong, tough side out of him by bringing his forehead down and focusing the eyes just through the eyebrows. Gives him a stronger, more masculine look, not necessarily angry, but definitely more of a rocker attitude. In this next photo, this is Justin Williams. He was on American Idol both season 8 and season 9. So what I wanted to do is match his image of the picture, of the photo, to his style of singing. He's more of a attractive, seductive, love song type of a singer, and this brings out that attitude in him. We did a bunch of work on his websites, and you'll see some other photos of him as we go through today as examples of things that we're going to look for. Here is Justin once again in a black and white photo. Now you'll notice one thing about this picture. Although it's a good solid picture, you'll notice that he has one eye almost completely in the dark. Now that's something that we can work on as a model, learning to open your face up just enough to add additional light. Now you notice he has his arm resting against the wall, but it's not pressed hard against the wall. It's a very comfortable, relaxed feel. You'll also notice that his head isn't touching his arm completely, although it's tipped in towards it, and his hand isn't in front of his face. There's a lot of things to remember as you're doing this, but the only thing he did not do is open his face up entirely to the light. It's a fantastic looking picture. Justin's got a fantastic look to him, but we could have opened up just a bit more. Our next photo is a fantastic photo of Whitney. Whitney here is posing in some plants, laying on her back, looking directly into the camera. She has amazing contact with the camera. Her eyes just pop and light up. Now, although this is a very modest picture, it also has a sense of seduction to it. This is a way that you can create seduction and sexuality without being overtly immodest. Once again, here's another picture of Whitney. She did a fantastic job. This is in studio in front of a white backdrop. We have her laying down on the ground, and I'm taking the picture from down at her angle. She's looking directly into the camera. One of the things you're going to notice here is not only is she smiling with her mouth, but her whole face is aglow because she's able to smile with her eyes as well. She's very relaxed, very comfortable, smiling, having a good time. It's a fantastic shot of her. This is Nikki, one of my absolute all-time favorite models. She is a very intense and very sweet, one of the most honest, open models I've ever worked with. Very self-directed, very in control of her own shots. She knows all of her good angles, and she knows all of her great poses. As you can see here, this is a very dramatic pose, but what Nikki understands so well is how to keep her face open to the camera, collecting all the light that she can, at the same time being able to look away. The way she does this is keeps her face open to the camera and turns her eyes away from the camera. It's so very important that you learn to do that first. If a photographer asks you to look away, do not turn your face first. Give the photographer an opportunity to shoot full face and full light on the face as your eyes move. Then begin to slowly move your face to meet where your eyes have focused upon. What that does will allow your photographer an opportunity to take a couple of shots full face, and as you come around, they'll catch you in each stage coming through. So your eyes stay focused on one position and you slowly bring your face to it. And in that process, you'll find a fantastic shot, much like this one. This next shot's another example of it where she's fully open to her light source. She's very aware of where her light is. Her light is directly in front of her. And she's actually in a very dark area. What we did was we bounced the light off a reflector into her face. So knowing where her light source was, she was able to keep her face open, but turn her eyes to the side, up and away, capture a very dramatic looking pose. This next shot's once again Justin Williams. This one we actually used for his poster for his New Zealand tour, as he toured down below the Pacific Islands and went all the way down into New Zealand. This particular shot's a very relaxed shot. He's got one shoulder raised, the other one back. He's got two light sources. One, as you can tell, is coming from one side behind him, lighting him up from behind, and the other is directly in front of him. Now, one of the ways he was able to get that full face lighting was to look directly into the light source, but above it. This is a simple trick that you can use anytime that someone wants to put the light source directly into you, is to look above it or beside it. That'll help you be able to keep your eyes open and relaxed as you're going through the photo. You'll also notice that we shot this off to the side. Many of your photographers will shoot you in a portrait style, but you want to make sure that they're also shooting you for commercial work as well. You can't sell your photos to a commercial body if you do not have the ability to add additional wording, text, or a product placement item. For example, on the right-hand side of this photo, we've left open room for text or a product, as well as down in the shirt and lower area, there's plenty of room for text and additional wording. That is how we were able to use this one for his poster with all of his information about all of his show dates. This next shot is a beautiful shot of a young lady looking out my sunroom window. As she's looking out the window, she's very aware of her light source. This is a natural light source coming in from the outside. So she allows it to light up her face, but she turns her face back just slightly so that I can pick up her eyelid and her eyebrow on the opposite side, which gives me two eyes to work with. Now, although you can't see the eye itself, it creates more of an open look to her face. If you do notice to the left of her, if you look in the window, you can actually see her reflection of her full face in the window as well. A very great graphic look, very commercial, with an opportunity and plenty of room around it to be able to insert products and wording. This young lady is an example of what a young model who hasn't had much experience may do with her eyes. As you notice that she's trying a very dramatic pose, and I give her credit for that. Great job. She's found her light source, which is directly off to her side. But she's working with two elements that are working against her. One, she hasn't worked with a fan in the past, and you'll notice that she's in a fan and her hair is blowing around. As it's blowing into her eye, she's having some trouble struggling keeping her eyes relaxed and comfortable, as well as she's looking right into the light source. Once again, like I said, looking above, beyond, or beside the light source will help you keep your eyes more comfortably relaxed, as well as when you're working with a fan, learning how to practice with it as well. As you practice your looks in a mirror, set up a fan for yourself and allow that fan to blow on you. Many of the photo shoots you'll go into will either be outdoors where you'll have some natural wind, or also they'll use a fan to create an effect indoors, and you'll need to be comfortable with your eyes open during that point in time. Here's an example of where we tie the face and the eyes in together. And this is actually an example of what I would like you to try to avoid. This is an attractive young lady, very tall, very slender. She's got some dramatic clothes. She's young. She's trying some new poses. But if you'll notice, with her eyes, there's a lack of confidence, and her face, a lack of expression. You have to ask yourself, what are you trying to convey? What are you trying to sell? What are you trying to give people in this photo, and it's just not coming across. Although there's plenty of room for print, although there's plenty of room for product placement, the face itself doesn't give you much of anything to be able to work with. This is another photo also of the same young lady. Now this is a minor and is kind of concerned about this pose from obvious reasons. Her knee and her leg are in a position where it creates almost a vulgar type of a look to it. She's not aware of how her body is presenting in this photo. Now I could have done some Photoshop and cleaned this up. I could have took the pole out above her head. I could have took the light out from above the statue, but I wouldn't even want to use this. First of all, she's way too young to be posing in this particular position. The second thing is, if you'll notice her face, once again, her eyes are squinted. There's no character in her mouth at all, and she's not giving you any type of a particular look. She's also not aware of her light source. Her light source is coming from over her shoulder, from the back side down. She only picked up a small amount of the light source on her forehead and a small amount on her cheek. She would have, in order to be able to make this particular photo work, she would have needed to bring her knee in to cover the area that's exposed and turn her face out towards the light source to pick up more light. This is the last one of her as well. Once again, remember, this is a minor, and she's just starting out. For all you young models out there, please, you can be attractive and you can be desirable without being vulgar. And if you notice this pose right here, her eyes are right into the camera, very little expression on her face. She is overtly overexposing her chest, and the way that her arch is in her back and her back end is raised creates almost a vulgar look. Be very careful about these particular things. Now, I did do these photos, but I was helping her be self-directed, so she was choosing poses on her own as well as I was putting her into poses. This is one particular pose she chose for herself that on camera comes across as a negative image. It'd be very difficult to get credible work if you put poses like this into your portfolio if you're going to go to look at general department stores and other places to get work. You want to avoid this in your portfolio as a younger model. This is a senior picture that we did with a young lady. She's having a lot of fun, and that's very important. Enjoy your photo work. Enjoy what you're doing. If it's a light and airy outdoor scene, or if it's some type of other scene, have fun with it. Don't be afraid to smile. Now, her hair fell a little bit into her eyes, and that's okay. It's a kind of a playful feel. She's leaning forward into the camera. She's almost past her light source. By leaning forward, she almost extended past the lights, and she's starting to get some shadows in her cheeks and her face. So be very aware of your light source. The light source is hitting her legs very well, and it was set for her back a little bit further, but by coming forward, she began to take away her light source. Make sure you feel that warmth on your face at all times, and the light going into each of your eyes. You'll notice also by leaning forward, it gives her some heavy darkness under her eyes and creates almost a puffy look underneath the eyes. Backing up will capture that light in those areas, soften that area up, and give you a much cleaner look. This next shot's once again of Nikki. What a wonderful model she is. If you look at her eyes, they sing in this photo. She's got a great smile. Her eyes are singing. She's looking up and away. Very well picked up on all of her light sources. She's got her foot up in kind of a playful position and pointed. Her hands are very relaxed. You'll notice that in all this picture, it's a very well balanced picture and very playful. Nikki does a fantastic job being self-directed. Now, for all young models, I always suggest that you bring with you an escort, especially if you're a minor. Make sure you're a parent or you have a legal guardian with you. In this particular case, Nikki brought along with her fiance, and we had a little fun just getting them together and taking some photos. He's an attractive young man, very stern, masculine pose for him, and she's showing what kind of love she has for him by posing beside him. It's a beautiful, genuine smile. This is a great photo. We got some other great photos of them together. But when you go out on your first photo shoots, please make sure as a minor that you take your parents along with you. you should have a mother or father with you. Now, an adult or a guardian with you is very important. If you work with a photographer, ask them a couple of things before you go. Will you have a place for you to change? Will you be able to change safely in wardrobes without anyone else coming into any rooms or areas where you're going to be? Make sure that it's very clear to the photographer that you don't want to be touched or handled during the photo shoot. Many photographers like to try to step in and handle the models. These are generally creeps who are just trying to get a little feel. That is very dangerous for minors who go out on photo shoots by themselves. By bringing a parent, a guardian, a boyfriend, someone along with you, it protects you as well as the photographer. Make sure that when your parents or guardians are there, that they're willing to step in anytime they feel something uncomfortable is going on. Be very cautious about photographers who offer a great deal of money for you to come out and shoot when you have no portfolio and you have no experience. A lot of times they're going to expect more for that money than just simple, legitimate photos. Be absolutely certain that you ask your questions about what ideas they have, what type of shoot it's going to be, what type of outfits you should bring, and what types of poses you can expect to do, so you can choose whether to go or not. When a parent's there, they need to be fully aware that once the photographer touches the minor, that they put themselves in a position where criminal charges can actually be brought toward them. Touching a minor at any point in time is not legal. It should not be done. If someone wants to adjust your hair or a bra strap or an underwear that's poking out of a pair of pants or do any adjustments at all, that should be the parent or the guardian. Someone should be able to step in and help out with that. Do not let the photographers handle you. Now, a lot of times the photographers on legitimate shoots will have with them hairstylist, makeup stylist, and other people there to assist. Those are usually females, and if you're comfortable with them helping you, that's perfectly fine. But if you have male assistants or male photographers and you ever at any point in time feel uncomfortable, stop the photo shoot, step out of the frame, and let them know that you're not comfortable with what's going on. Be very cautious as well about removing things such as bras and panties as a minor. We don't need you to get into a situation to where you're exposing yourself in any way, shape, or form by accident. Parents, be very aware that if these things happen, that not only can the photographer be charged, but you as well could be charged for a criminal act and or neglect. Let's take a look at some poses here. One of the most important poses you'll learn to use is what we call the S pose. The S pose is generally a pose that literally makes an S shape. As you look at this model in this frame, this is a perfect commercial photo. She's in a very attractive outfit. She's very tall and slender. She's got a strong look into the camera with a full light on her face. She's raised one shoulder and dropped the other, creating an angle from her head to her chest area. You'll then see that she's moved her waist out to the side and actually creates a very subtle S shape. She's also done another thing that helps slim her up even more. If you'll notice, she's placed her hands on her hips, and using her arms and her hands to cover the full width of her hips creates a more slender look. And with that subtle little touch down at the bottom of her dress with her hand, she creates somewhat of a playful, somewhat of a seductive look without being trashy or overtly sexual. This is a great photo for any advertiser who'd be able to use a fairly neutral shot and be able to plug in any product with plenty of space in the area where the trees are to the right of the photo for wording, text, and any other information that they may be able to need. This woman will be able to sell this product very easily. This next photo is another great example of an S-curve. You'll notice that she has her shoulder raised, another one dropped and lowered, slightly turned to an angle. It creates an angle on her head. Her face is fully open to the light and looking directly into the camera. And then she has a small arch in her back, and her hips are thrown out to one side. By shifting her weight completely over onto one leg and just using the other one for balance, she's been able to create a nice subtle S shape. Her one arm that's touching her leg is creating a slendering look, and the other arm, which is dangling, has a very comfortable, natural feel to it. The only opportunity I find in this photo that I would like to see is that the hand touching her leg be more of a natural pose. It's slightly posed. And when I say posed, you can tell the difference between natural and posed. The one hand dangling is a very natural curve. The other hand is very posed. This one here is another example of a S-shaped curve. Very playful. She's hanging in the tree. She has her face squared up to the camera and her eyes looking directly into the camera. She drops her lower shoulder. She turns her body out. She brings her hips out to the other side, puts all the weight on her hip side, relaxing the other leg, and creates a great S shape. Once again, the only thing that I'd like to see is a more natural hand motion or hand dangling down so that it's a more natural, less posed look to it. This next one's an example of how you can create an S shape in just about any position. This young lady's laying on the floor and I'm up on a ladder shooting down at her. The light sources are on the right and the left side of her at ground level. She's turned her face open to the light source, which allows plenty of light on her face and looking directly into the camera, even though her face is in an angle. Her shoulders are angled, one's above the other. And then she creates a twist in her body and puts her knee out to the side, opposite her head, creating a full S shape of her body. Her feet can be just about in any position she wants to try, and she could try several different positions, but all in all, this is a fantastic photo that pops against the wooden background in bright colors. Once again, you can try any type of pose you like. This is another kind of upside down pose. This young lady, I shot her in Salt Lake City. She was looking for an urban style photo shoot in just an average car. That's what we were able to capture. Now she tries some different poses, and I like this one here. It's not overtly sexy. It's not overdone. She's looking right into the camera. She's got her face lit up. It was very difficult to get her lit at all because it was inside of a car, and we had to bounce a lot of reflectors in to get her in the right particular way. But her hand is in a very natural position down below. It's very comfortable. It's soft. The one on her chest is a little bit too stiff. Be very aware of your full body. She did a little bit of a pursing of her lips and a very seductive look in her eyes. Once again, here's Justin again, our American Idol that we had a chance to tour with. This is shot north of Salt Lake City. And you'll notice he's in a very masculine pose. Once again, I used a warming effect. He's very relaxed, very comfortable, looking away out into the beautiful sunset. This next photo is actually kind of by chance. This was an escort that came along with two models that I was shooting to make sure that the photographer wasn't doing anything creepy or out of sort. But I noticed he had a great look to him and a great physique, and I asked him if he'd be willing to do some photos. I did ask him to remove his shirt. We set him down. I felt that we'd have a more dramatic look if we put him into a single lamp, had him look directly into the camera. He has a strong jawline, very strong eyes, and the light was able to create a good image of what his body shape was. A very masculine pose, a very comfortable pose. This turned out to be a great picture from someone who wasn't even there to model. Here we have Whitney again having some fun. We were inside of the mid-level of my photo studio. We had set up on a white backdrop. She's playing with her hair. She has a beautiful smile going on. She's trying something a little creative. Her feet are not propped up against anything. She's just holding them up in the air, but they're very relaxed. There's no stress or tension at all in her legs. Her hand, which is laying down on the ground, is very well arched. It's comfortable. It's not pressed down against the ground. This is a beautiful photo from a girl who understands her strengths and understands her weaknesses. This is Jarrett Burns. Not only was he an American Idol, but he was also featured on Simon Cowell's X Factor as well. Great guy, had a chance to tour with him some. This is backstage at one of his events. In this particular one, he liked this hat, and he was wearing this hat when I ran into him. And I asked him if he had posed for a couple of photos real quick, since we had a nice little area back in some downtime between sets. We took this shot. Now, the only light that we have is a natural sunlight coming through an overcast day, so it was a beautiful day to shoot on. But it creates a situation where we have a lot of darkness in his eyes in the area. Be aware of what your light source is. We could have tipped his head slightly more to one side, allowing more light into one side, and we would have still had a masculine look with a strong effect from the lighting. Now we can fix this in post-photography by simply throwing it into Photoshop and increasing the exposure in just those areas and bring his eyes out a little bit more. That's not that much of a problem. But as a model, you want to be more aware of where your light source is and how you can bring the natural light in to help out the photographer in any post-photography as well. This next one's another one with a hat shot. This young lady brought along this small cowboy hat, and it has a brim, which makes it more challenging to actually get light up underneath. Fortunately, we're shooting later in the day, and this is natural sunlight coming in from the side. What we were able to do was get her to tip slightly away from the sunlight, allowing more light to come in and fully light one side of her face and slightly light the other side. You don't want too much shadow from the nose across the entire face, but this really works out well because that one eye that's well lit in that side of the face draws you into the picture. She's got that one shoulder raised, the other one dropped, and with those pigtails, it really sets the mood for what type of photo we're doing right here. This is another photo of the same young lady in the same outfit. We put her inside into an old cast iron tub, and the only light source that we're using here is natural lighting coming through the window to one side of her. We did the exact same thing. We simply tipped her head, allowed that light to fill one full side of her face. She tipped her head down slightly. I let her go ahead and do that to drop the other eye because she was so strong with that one eye. I thought that would make a great look. By putting her feet directly into the camera, it gives you a sense of 3 dimensions in this photo as well. Think about that as well when you're shooting. If you have an opportunity where the photographer's down on the ground or near you or whatever, you could bring a hand towards him, an arm towards him, a leg towards him, a foot towards him, and create more of a 3D effect in your photos that can bring out some real pop-in pictures. This next one's a fantastic way of using a hat and still getting full facial lit up. She was able to tip the hat off to the side to clear the brim. You'll notice from the shadows behind her that we set the lights up down below to light up underneath the hat. That's one of the most difficult ways to get is when you have a large brimmed hat, but we were able to light it up from underneath with some strobes, and then she creates a fantastic S with her body. Once again, one shoulder raised, one shoulder lowered, one slightly forward, one slightly back. It creates a fantastic curvature or S in the body. She could have turned her body slightly more to lengthen out and thin up the stomach just slightly more, but all in all, it's a good photo. One thing you always want to do when you do your photography is make sure that you never keep your shoulders on an exact plane unless you're doing a very strong pose directly into the camera, and that's what the photographer wants. But as you're performing and I call it a performance because you literally are performing as you're posing. You're showing them your repertoire of what your great poses are. You're free to do what you want. Learn to use your shoulders to distinguish yourself. Always have one forward, one back, one raised, one lowered, and be very self-directive. Don't be afraid to go from pose to pose on your own. The one thing you do want to do is move from pose to pose slowly. Many photographers will catch the in-betweens and the partial angles that bring out some amazing photos that as you're transitioning from one pose to the next, you'll do so. Anytime he asks you to change pose, take a little time to just do it slowly. This next photo is a picture of a beautiful young lady. Her name is Chastity. We shot this up at the Capitol building, right on the terrace of the Utah State Capitol is where we shot that. And it was actually very late at night. It was about 9:30 at night. Pitch black outside. All we had was a small lamp. And what we did is we did a time-lapse photography. Now, if your photographer wants to do some specialty lighting, some time-lapse photography. The most important thing that you need to learn as a model is not to blink and be as still as possible. This was shot over about a 40-second exposure. So for 40 seconds, Chastity held this pose with her eyes fixed to be able to make it as clear as possible. Not only did I set it up on tripod, but I set it to go off on timer so that I was able to step into the photo, and you'll notice how well lit the arm rail and her body is. That's because I used a handheld strobe and flashed it multiple times to create the fill light that we needed for the photo. This was actually done over 40 seconds. She did an amazing job of staying still, allowing us to be able to get this great photo. Another example of time lapse, this last one that I have for you, is Justin. Justin and I were out in Las Vegas, and we were able to go out to the Hoover Dam. And this is the Hoover Dam at night. Absolutely no lighting outside whatsoever. Pitch black. It was actually very difficult for me to use a flashlight just to get focused on him. So I was able to get focused on him and put it onto manual focus. And then I was able to open the exposure for about 60 seconds. You'll notice that behind him, the dam is very glowing and very well lit, but not necessarily entirely in focus. And that's because the wind itself was actually so strong that it was slightly moving the camera. That's how easily just a little bit of movement can cause it to be out of focus. But we were able to get Justin in focus because I was able to go closer to him and fire off about 3 flashes off to the one side that were able to light him upper, mid, and lower areas, and he was able to stay still enough to where he remained crisp and clear. That's all I have for you today. Some tips. Just keep in mind, remember, whenever you go out on a photo shoot, make sure you communicate with the photographer well ahead of time. If you're a minor, make sure that you have a guardian or a parent with you. And parents, please. We put a lot of time and effort and energy into our children and keeping them safe. So please, if you take an interest in their photography, go with them and make sure that the gentleman is legit. The photographers are legit. There's a lot of creepy men out there. My name's Jason Leonard. I'm a photographer. I'm in Chattanooga, Tennessee. If you ever get in the area, look me up. Thank you very much.